Howdy folks, hope you're all having a good one, and welcome back to World of Warships with Rear Admiral Jingles. For today's video entertainment, we have a Tier 10 domination battle here on the Trident map. I mean, I say Tier 10. There are a couple of Tier 8s, there are a couple of Tier 9s. It is, however, mostly Tier 10. There are no submarines, 2 destroyers per side, and while it's technically correct to say that both teams have 1 aircraft carrier, HZ Caesar's team here in the Tier 10 Commonwealth light cruiser HMAS Brisbane, his team have managed to sneak an extra flight deck in the shape of the hybrid battleship, the USS Nebraska. So technically his team have the advantage, although it's not that much of an advantage. Honestly, I think people, and I've probably been guilty of it myself in the past, just make a bit too much of the power of the various different advantages and disadvantages that the, for some reason, World of Warships matchmaker likes to hand out to teams, whether it's giving extra flight decks to one team and not the other, or putting all of the radar on one team and not on the other. I mean, yeah, it makes a difference, but honestly, the biggest deciding factor is the player, not the ship they're playing. A good player in a bad ship will make a hell of a lot more difference than a bad player in a good ship. I mean, having additional flight decks, more than the enemy team, or more radar than the enemy team, it certainly isn't going to hurt your chances, but if you don't know how to use them, it doesn't really matter what kind of advantages the matchmaker's given you. The world's biggest donkey and the only radar cruiser on the team is still the world's biggest donkey, even if he is in a radar cruiser. I'm sure you get the idea. But anyway, on to Caesar's ship here. HMAS Brisbane. That is how you pronounce it, by the way. I know it's spelled Brisbane, but it's pronounced Brisbane. Like Sydney, Brisbane is not the capital of Australia. That honour goes to Melbourne. Although apparently, and this is something I didn't know until I just looked it up, by land mass or area, Brisbane is the 3rd largest city in the world. Yes, really. No, I had no idea either. As for the ship that proudly bears the city's name, the Brisbane here in World of Warships is an extremely capable Commonwealth light cruiser. It's very, very similar to the Royal Navy Tier 10 light cruiser HMS Minotaur. Although there are some significant differences, which I'll go into in a moment. But first I just want to point out how incredibly well Caesar here is using terrain masking, i.e. the island in front of him, to rain down death and destruction on the enemy team on the other side of the island without actually being directly spotted. This guy knows what he's doing. So anyway, it's certainly fair, to a certain degree at least, to think of HMAS Brisbane as a Commonwealth version of the British Tier 10 light cruiser HMS Minotaur. Both ships have more or less exactly the same terrible 16mm armour layout. Both ships are fast, both ships are armed with torpedoes, although the Brisbanes are better, which is saying something because the Minotaurs aren't bad, but I'll go into detail in that in a moment. Both ships have excellent manoeuvrability due to not just the decent top speed and relatively good rudder shift, but also the enhanced acceleration that British light cruisers have, and which the Brisbane here also has. Hang on a minute, what is this Schlieffen doing? Oh no. Oh, what is he doing? Dude. Yeah, there's no point running your hydro now, is there? With the torpedoes 30 metres off your starboard beam. Was it his hydro? Oh, I don't think it was. I mean, it might have been. Somebody else is also running the hydro. I like to think it was his hydro. I like to think he saw those torpedoes, did a Homer Simpson scream, and fat-fingered his hydro. Oh. Well, that was a good start. And it's a handy demonstration of just how potent the Brisbane's torpedoes are. Like I said, they are better than the torpedoes on the Minotaur, and the torpedoes on the Minotaur are not bad. The Brisbane, however, not only has an extra tube per launcher, so that's 10 torpedoes per side, but they also have a longer range of 13.5 kilometres. They do have a downside though, and that's the reload. The reload is more than 2 minutes, compared to the slightly more than a minute and a half reload on the Minotaur. But honestly, it's a cruiser, it's not a destroyer, it's not like you're spamming the torpedoes, so as downsides go, it's not that bad. I'd rather have more torpedoes hitting harder when you need them, rather than having more torpedoes ready to go faster when you've got nothing to launch them at. One of the other big differences between the Minotaur and the Brisbane are, of course, the guns, although again, superficially, very, very similar. These are both light cruisers, so they're both armed with 6-inch guns, 152mm. They both have 5 double turrets, so 10 guns each. But as you've no doubt noticed, the Brisbane, unlike the Minotaur, the Brisbane gets to fire high explosive shells. Now it pays for that with a slightly slower reload, but only slightly. The guns reload every 5 seconds. Also, it doesn't get quite as good armor-piercing shells as the Minotaur does, which is only fair because the Minotaur only gets armor-piercing shells. It doesn't get the same improved penetration angles, it doesn't get the short fuses. They're still good, they're just not as good as the armor-piercing shells on the Minotaur. One excellent feature, and often overlooked, that both of these ships have in common is the enhanced acceleration. The best way to explain what this is, get yourself up to top speed in anything that isn't the Brisbane or a British light cruiser. Destroyer, cruiser, battleship, anything, doesn't matter, they're all effectively the same for the purposes of this example. Once you're at full speed, pull hard rudder left or right and watch the ship start to slow down. That doesn't happen in British light cruisers and HMAS Brisbane. These ships will continue to accelerate due to their enhanced acceleration even when in a hard turn. One thing they certainly do not do is lose speed when they're turning. Honestly, the acceleration on these things just has to be seen to be believed. And that's kind of useful. I mean, obviously it's useful, but it's especially useful when you're in a ship that's as fragile as the Minotaur or the Brisbane. Because you're not always going to be able to use island cover to avoid detection and return fire, especially when there's an aircraft carrier in play, or somebody with hydro on the other side of the island that you're hiding behind, or radar. There are all kinds of situations, like right now for example, when they're going to see you and they're going to be shooting back at you. And in those circumstances, like right now for example, being able to get this thing from a dead stop to full speed in less than 10 seconds is really useful for avoiding return fire. It's pretty good for avoiding surprise torpedoes as well. Although, well, hydro was running, there was nothing particularly surprising about those torpedoes. And yes, the Brisbane also comes with radar. So that's one extremely unfortunate and very unhappy Shimakaze. Honestly, his smokescreen was kind of obvious. I guess he didn't realise the Brisbane has radar. This is 10 6-inch guns, firing every 5 seconds. Or to put it another way, oh no, it's not a dead, that's an extremely lucky. Is he dead? He might be dead. Just because we can't see him doesn't mean we can't shoot him. Yeah, it's a dead Shimakaze. And the team desperately needed that kill for a number of reasons. Because while that was Caesar's second kill, it's only his team's third. Yes, he has 2/3 of his team's kills at this point. The team have no cap circles. The enemy team are 300 points and 2 kills ahead. And this is going to be the team's first cap. If he can just avoid getting reset. Oh, I don't think he can. No, he can't. He was seconds away from flipping that cap and giving the team their first cap circle, and then he got reset. I'll have a quick word about the idiotic way this game calculates capture progress in a moment. But just look at this. Bear in mind, this is the standard of enemy player that's actually winning this battle at the moment. He just came out broadside on in front of that Iowa, losing almost all of his health in the process just to get his torpedoes away. And the torpedoes didn't even make it there. The Iowa got nuked down by the enemy Moskva. So he came out, lost all of his health, achieved nothing other than giving the Iowa some much needed XP and credits for doing extra damage, and now, well, if not for the heal, he'd already be decorating the bottom of the ocean. I mean, he's doing a fair bit of damage to Caesar's Brisbane here. The semi-armor piercing, the secondaries in particular, are certainly taking no prisoners. But there's no way Caesar's losing this gunfight. It's just a question of how much damage he's going to take in the process. That enemy cruiser, by the way, it's a clone of the Italian Michelangelo. So it basically does better the lower its hit points, and it has an exceptionally good heal. It's dead now, of course. That's Caesar's third kill and his team's fifth. Oh, hello. Radar's just come off cooldown, which is real bad news for the Jaeger. Now, the radar doesn't last a particularly long time, but it has a reasonably short cooldown. And again, it doesn't need to last a particularly long time when you have 10 6-inch guns spitting out high explosive shells with a, at this point, thanks to Adrenaline Rush, sub 5-second reload. It's the Conqueror who gets the kill though. Okay, so, well, at least the kills are even if the scores very definitely are not, nor are the caps. The team's still... Oh yeah, Jaeger torpedoes. That reminds me, I was going to talk about the beyond stupid way this game calculates capture progress. You're probably familiar with the way capture progress is calculated in World of Tanks. It's really, really very simple. Let's say you get your tank into a cap circle, and you accumulate 60 of 100 capture points, and then you take a hit and suffer some damage. Even if it's just module damage, your capture progress is reset back to 0. So the cap goes from 60 to 0. Now let's say there's 2 of you in the cap circle. You both entered at the same time. Is he going to get this kill? Certainly starting to look like it. Yep, there it is, kill number 4. So you both have 40 capture points for a total of 80 out of 100. One of you gets reset, you lose your 40, but the cap remains at 40 because the other tank with 40 capture points has not been reset. Yeah, makes sense. Very logical, very easy to understand. Doesn't work like that in World of Warships. And there's the Kraken Unleashed. If you're in the same circumstances in World of Warships, where there are 2 friendly ships, you and one other, inside a capture circle, and you've both accumulated some capture progress, and then one of you gets hit, the one that gets hit obviously loses all of their capture progress. But you lose some of yours too, even though you didn't even get spotted, let alone got hit. See, I always just assumed it was the same system as in World of Tanks, because it makes sense, everybody understands it, and I was very surprised to hear directly from one of the game developers themselves, when I brought this subject up in St. Petersburg, that this was in fact not the case, and he explained to me how it actually worked. And then I asked him why. They have yet to come up with a satisfying explanation. Don't know why they decided to make, I mean, we've got a good system here in World of Tanks, that works. Yeah, let's make it more complicated and counterintuitive. Why? Just because. Anyway. Honestly, I thought that the Nebraska and the Georgia were going to ram each other there. But the Nebraska, whether through luck or judgment, managed to avoid it. Actually, I think it might have been judgment, because the enemy team, if you have a look in chat, they are not singing the praises of the Georgia player. Getting into that situation, a Georgia versus a Nebraska, and managing to lose in the Georgia, that's pretty impressive. Good job. Of course, Caesar's team did just lose a Napoli, but the kill on the Georgia has put them ahead. Not only his 6th kill, but they're now actually ahead on kills, even if they still have no caps to the enemy's 2, and they're now not that far short of 500 points behind. However, as you can see once again, Caesar is using the old terrain to rain down fiery death and destruction on the Thunderer, as he makes a beeline for the capture point. In fact, he is inside the capture point, and he should be able to remain undetected, and hopefully this time actually flip it. And it looks like, from the other end, that Nebraska is hooked around and he's coming in to help. So as long as the Nebraska doesn't get spotted and reset, let's have a look at the capture progress. We should see the point at which the Nebraska crosses the line. And there, it just flipped from about 23 seconds to 14 seconds. So Nebraska, please don't get hit. Also Conqueror, please don't die. Now while things are not going particularly well, here is the precise point where it all goes to shit. About 10 seconds ago, the Lexington's aircraft got him spotted. As he turns to look at the incoming Lexington rocket attack planes and also check that the Nebraska isn't getting itself reset, he and the Nebraska are 1 second away from flipping this cap. Unfortunately, at least one of those enemy battleships is paying attention. There's the reset, literally with 0 seconds to go. And then it looks like somebody hit the Nebraska too. They're now from 0 back up to 30 seconds to take this cap. They have, however, sunk the Thunderer. So it's bought them some time. Not time to take the cap, but time to get the remaining 2 enemy ships, or at least another few cap circles before the enemy team reach 1,000 points and win. They just need to not lose any more ships. I mean, sinking more enemy ships would be nice, but unless they can sink them both, when the enemy team's 150 points away from winning, the worst thing you can do is give them more kills. And then the Conqueror gives them another kill. Okay, so yeah, less than ideal. They're now only 100 points away from winning. The team are now in a much, much trickier situation, because they kind of now need to kill that Conqueror. I mean, they need to kill the Lexington as well, but they're never going to find the Lexington in the time remaining before the enemy team reach 1,000 points, unless they can buy themselves some time by killing the Conqueror. And then, ideally, flipping that central cap as they all fan out in an effort to find and sink the Lexington. And that's a whole bunch of things that they need to do very, very quickly without anybody else dying. And so, of course, right after the Conqueror dies, the Nebraska gets himself killed by the enemy Conqueror, putting the enemy team at 993 points and about 2 seconds away from winning. To be completely fair, while my initial reaction upon watching this replay was, "Oh my God, Nebraska, what are you doing?" he didn't really have much of a choice. The enemy team were about 30 seconds away from winning anyway, unless somebody took the Conqueror down. So he kind of had to take the chance. And honestly, I kind of have to give props to a hybrid battleship player who remembers the battleship part of the hybrid battleship title and actually tried to use his guns. None of which, of course, is much consolation to Caesar here, who got 6 kills and more than 2,000 base experience on a defeat. That's more experience for losing than the best performing enemy player got for winning. All of which just goes to prove the increasingly accurate saying that if you can't take a joke, you really shouldn't be playing World of Tanks or World of Warships. Yes, that is a reference to yesterday's World of Tanks video, which I hope you also enjoyed, as much as you enjoyed this one, painful though it was to watch. As always, take care, and I'll catch you next time.